Most people would never guess I was the owner of the place. That was exactly the point. I'd spent the last few years building my company from the ground up, hiring dozens of people, and opening locations in 4 cities. But lately, something felt off. Too many customer complaints were trickling in, especially about one specific location on the edge of town. So I decided to see things for myself. No suit. No name badge. Just jeans, a faded jacket, and a baseball cap pulled low. I parked my car in the far corner of the lot and walked through the automatic doors just as the morning rush started to slow. The store looked clean, and the shelves were stocked, but there was something tense in the air, something you could feel even before anyone spoke to you. I wandered the aisles, picking up a few items and watching the staff. Most were polite, if a little rushed. Then I made my way to the counter. The manager, Chris, according to their name tag, stood behind the register, arms crossed, watching the team with a look that hovered somewhere between impatience and annoyance. I got in line behind an elderly woman and waited. When it was my turn, I placed my items down, smiled, and said, "Morning. How's business today?" Chris barely looked up, sighing as if I was wasting their time. "You here to buy something or just chat?" "We're busy." I kept my smile, ignoring the sting of the brush off. "I'm a regular customer. Just curious." Chris rolled their eyes and started ringing up my things. "We don't have time for people wandering around asking questions. If you're not buying, you can leave." The way they spoke, the tone, the body language, none of it matched what I expected from someone running my store. I paid in cash, still playing my part, and tucked the receipt into my pocket. I knew right then, this visit was about to get interesting. I took a slow lap around the store, pretending to browse while I watched Chris interact with others. The more I saw, the more unsettled I felt. Chris barked orders at the staff in front of customers, criticized a younger employee for stocking shelves too slowly, and ignored a mother asking for help finding diapers. It wasn't just a bad day. This was a pattern. The rest of the team seemed nervous around Chris, quick glances, hushed tones, shoulders hunched as they hurried to get things done. I stepped aside near the self-checkout and called over one of the younger staffers. She looked nervous but managed a polite smile. "Hi," I said gently. "I was wondering, how long have you worked here?" "Almost a year," she replied, her voice quiet. "And do you like it?" She hesitated, glancing at Chris, who was now complaining to another cashier about customers who think they own the place. "It's okay. Most days are fine. Just, management can be tough sometimes." She didn't say more, but her eyes told the rest. Before I could thank her, Chris's voice cut through the air. "Hey. If you're done with your little survey, maybe let my team get back to work. We're not here to entertain you." A couple of shoppers turned to stare. I kept calm, but inside, I felt a slow burn. I nodded and moved away, but my mind was made up. I'd seen enough. It was time to end the charade. I walked outside to my car and sat for a few minutes, letting the adrenaline settle. I took out my phone and typed a quick message to my regional HR director, asking her to meet me at the store within the hour, no explanation, just urgency. By the time I returned, the mood inside had shifted. Chris was at the front, still lecturing one of the cashiers in a voice loud enough for the few remaining customers to hear. I waited quietly by the entrance until I saw HR, Andrea, arrive, businesslike and purposeful, clipboard in hand. She spotted me immediately. I gave her a small nod, and together we approached the counter. Chris glanced up, immediately straightening when he saw Andrea. "Can I help you?" he asked, tone suddenly polite. Andrea smiled tightly. "We're here for a quick audit." "This is Mr. Walker," she said, gesturing toward me. "He's with corporate." Chris barely looked at me, dismissing me with a flicker of annoyance before returning his full attention to Andrea. "Would have been nice to get a heads up," he said. I stepped forward and removed my cap. "No need for introductions, Chris," I said quietly. "I've owned this store for 5 years." For a split second, Chris's face went blank, eyes widening, lips parting in surprise. The color drained from his cheeks as realization set in. The staff, suddenly alert, exchanged looks. The young employee I'd spoken to earlier watched with wide eyes, hope and disbelief mixing in her expression. I let the silence hang for a moment longer before speaking. "Let's step into your office. We need to talk." Chris led the way, shoulders tense, into the small office at the back of the store. Andrea and I followed, the door closing with a quiet click behind us. The room suddenly felt smaller than ever. Chris tried to recover, putting on a businesslike tone. "Look, if there's an issue with performance, I wish you'd let me know ahead of time. I run a tight ship here." I sat down across from him, calm and direct. "That's exactly why we're here. I wanted to see firsthand how the team, and management, handle day-to-day business, especially with all the recent complaints." Andrea opened her folder, quietly referencing a stack of printed reports. "We've had several notes about customer service and staff morale, Chris. Multiple employees have said they feel uncomfortable coming to work." Chris scoffed, forcing a smile. "Some people just can't handle a fast-paced environment. I'm tough, but I get results. That's why this store always hits its numbers." I shook my head slowly. "Hitting numbers isn't everything. How you treat people matters. I saw and heard enough today to know there's a serious problem with how you talk to both customers and staff. That's not how we operate, at any level." Chris tried to protest. "You can't believe everything you hear, but I saw it with my own eyes," I interrupted, steady and unwavering. "Your attitude, the way you dismiss customers, the way you talk down to your team, it's unacceptable." Andrea looked Chris straight in the eye. "We have policies for a reason. This isn't just about performance, it's about respect and trust. Right now, you've lost both." Chris's confidence began to crumble. For the first time, there was no argument, just silence. The silence in the office hung heavy. Chris's hands fidgeted on the desk, his earlier bravado gone. He glanced between me and Andrea, searching for any sign that this might still blow over. But I was done giving second chances. "When you treat people like they don't matter, you risk losing the very team that keeps this store running," I said quietly but firmly. "Your job as a manager is to lead by example, not intimidation." Andrea slid a final report across the table. "This is an official record of complaints filed in the last 3 months. Employees, customers, even vendors. This isn't a one-off incident, Chris. It's a pattern." Chris opened his mouth to respond, but I raised my hand gently. "It's time to take responsibility. Today, you crossed the line, again. This isn't the company I built, and it's not the kind of leadership we value." Andrea spoke next, her voice steady. "Effective immediately, we're relieving you of your duties. We'll handle the transition. Please gather your things." Chris sat in stunned silence, the weight of it finally sinking in. No more excuses, no more dismissing concerns. I stood up, ready to leave. "Your actions have consequences. We wish you well, but it's time for this store, and the people in it, to move forward." Andrea gathered her notes and opened the door. Chris, still pale and silent, slowly got to his feet. As we left the office, the news spread quickly. The staff exchanged cautious glances, some surprised, some relieved, a few even hopeful. I paused by the front counter, catching the eye of the young woman I'd spoken to earlier. This time, I offered a real smile. "Things are about to change around here," I promised. And for the first time all day, the atmosphere in the store felt lighter. Word spread through the store in seconds: Chris was gone. The shock on people's faces quickly gave way to whispers of relief. I could feel the tension dissolve as staff regrouped at their stations, some of them exchanging uncertain but hopeful glances. Andrea stayed behind to handle paperwork and help answer any questions. I decided to walk the floor, not as an undercover customer this time, but as the owner, open, direct, and approachable. I gathered the entire staff in the break room. Some were still in disbelief, others quietly optimistic. I looked around the room, meeting their eyes, letting them know I was there not just as a boss, but as someone who cared. I know it's been a rough time for a lot of you, I began, my tone steady but genuine. Leadership isn't about fear or intimidation, it's about respect, teamwork, and making sure everyone is valued. That starts today. We're going to rebuild trust, together. One of the older staff members, a stock supervisor named Marvin, nodded. We just want to do our jobs and feel like we matter. You do matter, I replied. Every person here is a part of this company's success. We'll be making changes, starting with listening, really listening, to what you need to do your best work. The room felt lighter, the atmosphere shifting from wary to welcoming. I stayed to answer questions, jot down concerns, and assure them that things would improve, not just for a day, but for good. Before I left, the young cashier I'd spoken to earlier approached me. She smiled, her relief unmistakable. Thank you. For noticing. For actually caring. I smiled back. It's what I should have done a long time ago. And it's just the beginning. The days that followed brought real change. Andrea organized meetings where every team member could share feedback without fear. We adjusted schedules, improved training, and made sure every employee understood that their voice mattered. Slowly, the energy in the store shifted, staff who had seemed anxious and withdrawn began to relax, offer ideas, and even smile more often. Customer service improved almost overnight. Shoppers noticed the difference. People commented on the friendlier staff, faster help, and a positive atmosphere that made them want to come back. Sales climbed higher than they'd been in months, not just because of numbers, but because people could feel the difference. One afternoon, as I was leaving the store after another check-in, Marvin, the stock supervisor, stopped me near the entrance. Never thought I'd see this place turn around, he admitted, shaking my hand. We've got your back now. Thanks for trusting us. I smiled. I always did. Now it's time you all trust yourselves, too. As I stepped into the parking lot, I looked back through the store windows. The staff were laughing together at the counter, helping a young mother with her groceries. There was pride in the way they moved, a sense of ownership that no amount of intimidation could ever create. Driving away, I knew I'd done the right thing. Not just for the company, but for every person who called that place their second home. Weeks passed, and the transformation became clear to everyone, not just in numbers, but in the heart of the store itself. Andrea continued to check in regularly, and I made it a point to visit, not in disguise, but as myself, open and visible, always ready to listen. The young cashier who once seemed so nervous now greeted customers with confidence. Marvin's team was working more efficiently, and new employees were quickly welcomed into a positive, supportive environment. The customers kept coming back, spreading the word about the friendly staff and the great vibe at the store. One afternoon, we held a small staff appreciation lunch in the break room. It wasn't anything fancy, just good food, laughter, and a chance for everyone to relax. As I stood up to say a few words, I looked around at the faces in the room. People were happier, stronger, and, most importantly, they knew they mattered. I want to thank all of you, I said, raising my cup. You turned this store into something special, not with numbers, but with kindness and respect. That's how we move forward, together. Applause filled the room. There was real hope now, and a sense of family. The lesson was simple: leadership is about lifting people up, not holding them down. When I left that day, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The store was thriving, the people were thriving, and I knew, no matter how big the company grew, I'd never forget the importance of walking in someone else's shoes. Months later, that once troubled store had become a model for every other location in the company. The turnaround was so dramatic that other managers started visiting to learn how a positive culture could make such a difference. Andrea was promoted to oversee training across the region, using what we'd learned to help other teams rebuild trust and morale. Marvin and the young cashier both moved up to leadership roles, showing the power of giving people a real chance to grow. I made unannounced visits to stores more often, not in disguise, but as a leader committed to transparency and respect. Every time I walked into that original store, I was greeted warmly, not because I owned it, but because I was part of their story. Chris eventually found work elsewhere, hopefully with a better understanding of what real leadership requires. The experience taught me something, too. Success isn't measured by profits or titles, but by the lives you impact and the environment you create. The store's reputation continued to grow. Customers returned not just for what we sold, but for how they were treated. The staff, once wary and withdrawn, now welcomed each day as a chance to do better, for themselves, for each other, and for the community. That's what real leadership looks like. And it started with one simple lesson: never underestimate the power of respect. A year after that fateful visit, our company gathered for its annual award ceremony, a celebration of the people who made everything possible. When the time came to honor the top-performing store, there was no suspense in the room. The team from my first location stood out, not just for sales, but for teamwork, service, and community impact. I called Marvin, the young cashier, now assistant manager, and the rest of the crew up to the stage. They accepted the award not with pride in just numbers, but with pride in each other. The applause was genuine and long, proof that people notice when you do things the right way. After the ceremony, I mingled with the staff. Many shared stories of how things had changed for them. One employee had been able to buy her first car, another had started night classes with encouragement from the team. The store had become more than a workplace. It was a place where people believed in each other, and in themselves. As the evening wrapped up, I stood at the back of the room, quietly watching the celebration. I felt a quiet gratitude, thankful I'd taken that step, disguised or not, to really see what was happening in my company. The lesson was one I'd carry forever: real leadership means being present, listening, and having the courage to make hard choices for the right reasons. And as I left that night, I knew the store, and everyone in it, had a future brighter than I ever imagined.